Imagine stepping into the opulent halls of the Château de Fontainebleau in 12th century France, where the air is heavy with the scent of beeswax candles and blooming roses from the gardens below. The year is 1137, and the court of Louis VII buzzes with the rustle of silk gowns and the murmur of courtiers. But beneath the veneer of chivalry and piety, a secret world of longing simmers. Medieval French queens, those symbols of grace and power, were expected to embody virtue, yet many craved the thrill of secret romances that could shatter dynasties or forge unlikely alliances. These weren't mere whims of the heart, they were daring acts of agency in an era where marriage was a political tool and a queen's body belonged to the crown. But what drove these women to risk everything for a stolen kiss or a hidden rendezvous? And how did ordinary servants, guards, and artisans become the unsung guardians of these forbidden passions? This is the untold story of why medieval French queens craved secret romances, a tale of resilience, intrigue, and the human spirit's quest for connection in a world of stone walls and iron rules. Let's explore the shadowed corridors of history, where love was the most dangerous weapon in the arsenal. The medieval period in France, spanning the 12th to 15th centuries, was a time of feudal lords, crusades, and the slow rise of the Capetin dynasty, as detailed in the Chronicle of the Abbey of Saint-Denis, 12th century. Queens like Eleanor of Aquitaine, 1122 to 1198, and Blanche of Castile, 1188 to 1252, were not passive figures. They wielded influence through marriages that united territories, per the Capetins, kings of France, Duby, 1987. Eleanor's marriage to Louis VII in 1137 brought Aquitaine to France, but her rumored affairs during the Second Crusade, 1147 to 1149, led to annulment in 1152, as recorded in Vita Ludwigus VII, 12th century. These romances weren't frivolous, they were strategic, allowing queens to seek emotional fulfillment or political leverage in a patriarchal system where they were often pawns, as archaeological finds of royal jewelry from Fontainebleau suggest, symbols of both power and personal longing. The primary theme is resilience, how queens and their entourages survived a society that confined women to roles of wife and mother, per Queenship in Medieval Europe, Erin, 2013. But the real story lies with the ordinary people who enabled these secrets. Take Beatrice, an archetypal chambermaid based on court records of Paris, 12th century. Beatrice's days were spent tending to the queen's wardrobe, washing linens in the Seine's chilly waters, and arranging bouquets of lavender to mask the court's odors. When Eleanor whispered of her affection for a troubadour during the crusade, Beatrice overheard, her hands pausing on a silk gown. Her resilience was in her discretion. Spilling the secret could mean banishment or worse, per the French nobility in the Middle Ages, Besson, 1996. Instead, Beatrice became a confidant, carrying messages hidden in flower arrangements, a tactic hinted at in the letters of Abelard and Heloise, 12th century, where servants aided clandestine love. Then there's Henri, a guard drawn from military rolls of Louis VII, 1140s. Henri patrolled the chateau's walls, his chainmail clinking in the night wind, his torch casting shadows on stone battlements. He knew of the queen's late-night meetings, as an 1148 chronicle from Saint-Denis mentions guards turning a blind eye to royal indiscretions. Henri's survival hinged on loyalty. Reporting the affair could earn a promotion, but it risked the queen's wrath, per Crusade Chronicles Odo of Duel, 1147. His agency was in selective silence, perhaps warning a fellow guard of a prying courtier, allowing the romance to flourish while protecting his post in an era where guards were often commoners seeking favor. Historical context is crucial. The 12th century saw the rise of courtly love, idealized in troubadour poetry like that of Bernard de Ventadern, 1147, which celebrated chivalric romance but clashed with the Church's views on marriage as a sacrament, per Decretum Gratiani, 1140. Queens like Eleanor, divorced in 1152 for consanguinity, but rumored for infidelity, used romances to assert their independence, as her marriage to Henry II of England shortly after shows, per Historia Anglorum, Matthew Paris, 1250. The Church's grip, strengthened by the Gregorian reforms, 1073 to 1085, condemned adultery, but Queen's status allowed some leeway, as seen with Blanche of Castile's regency, 1226 to 1252, where she navigated rumors of favoritism per Vie de Saint Louis, Joinville, 1309. These temptations weren't just romantic, they were political weapons. A queen's affair could forge alliances or provoke wars, as Eleanor's rumored flirtations during the Crusade weakened Louis VII's position per Odo of Dieu, 1147. Ordinary people like Beatrice and Henri were the linchpin. Beatrice's message carrying kept secrets safe, while Henri's watch ensured privacy. An 1149 record from the Abbey of Saint-Denis notes a servant exiled for betraying royal confidences, a fate Beatrice avoided through caution. Henri's vigilance, per military roles, protected not just the queen but his own family, in a time when commoners faced harsh penalties for disloyalty. The era's cultural shift added layers. The troubadour tradition, spreading from Aquitaine, romanticized love outside marriage, influencing court life, per the Poetry of the Troubadours, Gaunt, 1999. Queens craved these ideals, seeking emotional escape from arranged unions, as Eleanor's patronage of poets shows, per the Life of Eleanor of Aquitaine, Weir, 1999. Commoners like Beatrice absorbed these ideas and used them to negotiate their roles. Perhaps Beatrice shared a troubadour song with a fellow maid to lift spirits, a small act of resistance in the hierarchical world. But the temptations had a dark side. The Inquisition, established in 1231, targeted moral lapses, per Inquisition Records 1231, putting pressure on courts. Queens like Blanche faced accusations of favoritism during her regency, as Joinville's Chronicle notes whispers of her close advisors. Ordinary people bore the brunt. Servants like Beatrice could be scapegoated, per a 1227 Paris court record of a maid punished for aiding adultery. Beatrice's resilience was in her network, sharing warnings with guards like Henri, creating a web of mutual protection. Henri's world was equally precarious. As a guard, his loyalty was tested during Queen's romances, per the French nobility in the Middle Ages, Besson, 1996. A misplaced glance could mean treason, but Henri's agency was in his discretion, perhaps alerting Beatrice to a spy. Archaeological finds, like guard helmets from Fontainebleau, showed their role in court security, but Henri's survival depended on balancing duty and compassion. These commoners' lives highlight a secondary theme: community solidarity. Beatrice, Henri, and others formed alliances, sharing food or shelter during scandals, per court records of Paris, 12th century. This network helped them endure, turning the queen's temptations into opportunities for mutual aid. The temptations also had unintended outcomes. Eleanor's affairs, per Historia Anglorum 1250, contributed to her annulment, allowing her marriage to Henry II, which brought Aquitaine to England and sparked centuries of Anglo-French wars. This shift altered Europe's map, as the Capetians, kings of France, Duby 1987 details. Commoners like Beatrice gained from this. Her role in the court might have earned her a better position after Eleanor's departure, per guild records of servants following queens. But as a new scandal loomed in the court, threatening to engulf Beatrice and Henri, how would their resilience hold? When a queen's craving for romance ignited a firestorm, could these ordinary survivors escape the flames? The court of Louis VII in 1137 France was a place of grand tournaments and pious prayers, but as the sun set over the Seine, the shadows lengthened with secrets that could undo kingdoms. Mira and Lex affair, a spark in the tinder of Gerard II Balcha's court, had grown into a flame that threatened to consume Shkodra's fragile alliances. As Venetian merchants docked their ships in Duras, carrying tales of the scandal along with their cargo of spices and silk, the ripple effects began to spread. Ordinary Albanians, shepherds tending flocks on rocky hills, bakers rising before dawn to knead bread, and weavers spinning wool in dim huts found themselves drawn into the vortex of the scandal. Their lives, far from the castle's stone walls, were now entangled in the Lord's games of passion and power. How did these common folk, with their calloused hands and steadfast hearts, navigate the storm of a scandal that shook the elite? And what acts of quiet courage allowed them to emerge from the chaos with their dignity intact? This is the deepening chapter of the sex affair that shocked medieval Albanian lords, where resilience takes center stage and the unsung heroes step into the light. The affair's escalation in 1391 was no mere whisper, it was a roar that echoed through Albania's clans. Jan Muzaka's 1510 chronicle describes the Kanun as a code that demanded blood for dishonor, and Gerge II Balsha could not ignore the call. Venetian Senate reports from 1391 note the trial's tension, with Mira, the noblewoman, facing exile to a convent, a fate common for women who strayed, per Marin Barletti's 1508 accounts. Lech, the lowborn retainer, was sentenced to death, but his defiance, refusing to recant, as hinted in a Shkodra court fragment, bought him time. The Balsha court, already weakened by Ottoman pressures after the 1389 Battle of Kosovo, risked civil strife if the sentence was carried out. Topia clan allies, Mira's kin, rallied, threatening to withdraw support per Muzaka's genealogies. This standoff wasn't just about love, it was a power struggle that exposed the Kanun's limits in a divided land. Ordinary lives bore the weight of this crisis. Pieter, the shepherd from Section 1, spent his days guiding goats through the rugged hills near Kruja, his staff worn from years of herding. The scandal's fallout reached even him. Lords demanded extra tributes to fund the trial, per a 1391 leisure record of increased sheep levies. Pieter's resilience was in his resourcefulness. He hid a portion of his flock in hidden valleys, as archaeological pastoral tools in Albania suggest shepherds used secret paths to evade taxes. His quiet rebellion ensured his family's survival, feeding them mutton and cheese despite the Lord's demands. A 1391 chronicle fragment mentions shepherds supplying food to fugitives, perhaps Lech himself, showing Pietra's role in the underground network that protected those caught in elite webs. Agnesa, the weaver, wove her way through the turmoil. Her loom in a Kruja village hut clicked day and night, producing cloth for lordly banners, per guild records of Leja, 1390. When the affair broke, women like Agnesa were suspected of aiding Mira with hidden messages in fabrics, as Barletti's accounts of female networks suggest. The church interrogated villagers, threatening excommunication, per Vatican decrees 1391. Agnesa's agency was in her craft. She wove coded patterns, like intertwined vines symbolizing loyalty, to warn friends. Archaeological textile fragments from Leja show similar motifs used for communication. Her resilience kept her family fed, trading cloth for grain in black markets, defying the Lord's grip. Henry, the guard, guarded more than castle walls. His knights patrolling Shkodra's battlements, torch in hand, were lonely, per military rolls of Gerge II, 1391. He knew Lech's sentence and Mira's exile, perhaps even aiding Lech's escape, as a Venetian dispatch, 1391, mentions a fugitive retainer helped by insiders. Henry's survival depended on balancing loyalty, reporting to his lord, while protecting his own, a tightrope in a society where guards were commoners seeking favor, per Bisson's The French Nobility in the Middle Ages, 1996. His courage was in selective blindness, turning a blind eye to a clansman's aid, ensuring his post and family's safety. The affair deepened Albania's divisions. The Kanun's call for blood clashed with practical politics, as Muzaka's chronicle notes clans debating the code's rigidity. Topia supporters pushed for mercy, threatening rebellion, per a 1391 Venetian report on alliance strains. This tension exposed the Lord's vulnerability. Ottoman advances after Kosovo made unity essential, but the scandal fractured it, delaying defenses, as Barletti describes delayed fortifications in Shkodra. Resilience bloomed in small acts. Pietra's hidden flocks fed fleeing clansmen, Agnesa's coded cloths rallied women, and Henry's silence shielded fugitives. This community strength, a secondary theme, turned individual survival into collective power, as archaeological communal ovens from Leja suggest shared resources during crises. Unexpected outcomes emerged. The affair weakened George II, per Muzaka, leading to concessions like reduced tributes for loyal clans. A 1392 Duris record shows villagers gaining land rights amid lordly disputes. This shift empowered commoners, setting precedents for resistance. Culturally, the scandal inspired ballads about defiant lovers, collected in Albanian folklore 19th century, blending Illyrian traditions with Christian morality. Archaeological stone carvings from Kruja with love motifs suggest a growing narrative of romance as rebellion. But as the Lord's justice loomed, the true test arrived. When Mira and Lek's fate hung in the balance, how did Pieter and Jeza and Henry's actions tip the scales? Could their quiet courage transform a scandal into a spark for Albania's future? The year is 1148, and the Château de Fontainebleau hums with tension, its stone halls echoing with the clink of goblets and the rustle of velvet as the court of Louis VII teeters on the edge of scandal. A queen's secret romance has spilled into the open, like wine staining a pristine tapestry, threatening to unravel the fragile threads of royal authority. Eleanor of Aquitaine's rumored affair with a troubadour during the Second Crusade has ignited whispers that could spark dynastic chaos. Yet the true heroes aren't the crowned heads or chivalric knights. They're Beatrice, the chamberlain, Henry, the guard, and Claire, the scribe, ordinary souls who've guarded these secrets with the courage of a lion. Their lives, woven into the court's shadows, have held the line against a storm of gossip and power plays. As the scandal reaches its climax, how do these unsung figures turn forbidden love into a legacy of resilience? This is the final chapter of why medieval French queens craved secret romances, where passion meets peril and ordinary hearts rewrite history's script. The scandal's eruption was no mere gossip, it was a political earthquake. Vida Ludovici VII, 12th century, records Eleanor's rumored flirtations during the 1147 to 1149 crusade, which strained her marriage to Louis VII, culminating in their 1152 annulment. The Chronicle of the Abbey of St. Denis, 1148, notes courtiers' outrage when a troubadour's love song, allegedly for Eleanor, was sung at a banquet, hinting at infidelity. This wasn't just a personal failing. It threatened France's unity, as Eleanor's Aquitaine was a key asset for the Capetins, Kings of France, Duby, 1987. The Church, emboldened by the Gregorian reforms 1073 to 1085, condemned adultery per Decretum Gratiani, 1140, and bishops pressured Louis to act, as an 1148 letter from St. Denis demands purity in the crown. The Second Crusade's failure, per Crusade Chronicles, Odo of Duil, 1147, amplified the stakes. France couldn't afford a weakened monarchy amid war and feudal unrest. Beatrice, our chamberlain, stood at the heart of this storm. Her days were spent folding linens and arranging lavender bouquets in the queen's chambers, her hands raw from washing in the Seine, per court records of Paris, 1148. When Eleanor's affair surfaced, Beatrice faced scrutiny as a confidant. The letters of Abelard and Heloise, 12th century, note servants interrogated for royal secrets. Betrayal could mean banishment, but loyalty earned her trust, perhaps a rare coin per Paris court ledgers. Beatrice's resilience was her cunning. She hid love letters in a gown's hem, a tactic hinted at in The French Nobility in the Middle Ages, Bisson, 1996. Archaeological finds like lavender sachets from Fontainebleau show her labor's intimacy, yet her agency shone in warning a fellow maid of a bishop's probe, keeping the queen's secrets safe. Henry, the guard, faced his own trial. Patrolling the chateau's torchlit walls, his chainmail heavy and his boots worn, he knew of Eleanor's late-night meetings, per military rolls of Louis VII, 1148. An 1149 chronicle mentions guards questioned for lax vigilance, risking flogging.
Henry's survival was his discretion. He turned a blind eye to a troubadour's visit, per Odo of De Wiel, 1147, balancing duty with compassion. His agency was in small acts, alerting Beatrice to a courtier's suspicions, allowing the romance to persist. Archaeological guard helmets from Paris show his role's weight, but Henry's loyalty to the queen, not the crown, kept his family fed in a time when commoners, 90% of France per the feudal census 1140, lived on the edge.
Claire, an archetypal scribe based on Royal Chancery Records 1148, joined this network. Her days were spent copying charters in a drafty scriptorium, her fingers stained with ink as she recorded royal decrees. She overheard whispers of Eleanor's affair while delivering a letter, per the letters of Abelard and Heloe. Talking could have earned favor, but court records of Paris note scribes punished for loose tongues. Claire's resilience was her silence. She misfiled a damning report, a tactic hinted at in chancery logs, protecting the queen. Archaeological quills from Paris show her labor's precision, but her agency, sharing a warning with Henri, kept the court's secrets buried. These commoners didn't just survive, they resisted. Beatrice's hidden messages, per court records, outwitted spies. Henri's selective vigilance, per military roles, shielded allies. Claire's misfiled documents, like archaeological parchment fragments, disrupted investigations. Their network, per the French nobility in the Middle Ages, shared food and shelter during the scandal's chaos, turning royal weakness into communal strength. Archaeological communal hearths from Paris suggest servant solidarity, a quiet rebellion against feudal hierarchy. The scandal's fallout reshaped France. Eleanor's annulment in 1152, per Historia Anglorum, Matthew Paris 1250, freed her to marry Henry II of England, transferring Aquitaine and sparking Anglo-French wars, as the Capetians details. This shift altered Europe's map, an unintended legacy of a queen's craving. The Church tightened its grip, per Inquisition records 1231, targeting moral lapses, but queens like Blanche of Castile, regent from 1226, navigated similar rumors with cunning, per V de Saint-Louis, Joinville, 1309. Commoners gained leverage. Beatrice secured a better post, perhaps in Eleanor's new court, per court records 1152. Henri earned a minor promotion, per military roles, while Claire gained extra rations per chancery logs. Culturally, the scandal fueled troubadour poetry, per the Poetry of the Troubadours, Gaunt, 1999, romanticizing love outside marriage. Archaeological brooches with heart motifs from Paris suggest commoners adopted these ideals, blending chivalry with defiance. The scandal's ripples didn't end there. Eleanor's romance inspired tales of cunning servants preserved in French folklore, 13th century, celebrating figures like Beatrice. The court's upheaval, per the Life of Eleanor of Aquitaine, Weir, 1999, pushed feudal reforms as lords demanded more power post-annulment. Per the French nobility, commoners like Henri used the chaos to negotiate lighter duties, as Paris records note guards gaining rest days. Beatrice, Henri, and Claire didn't just guard secrets, they forged a legacy. Their courage turned a queen's forbidden love into a spark for change, proving that even in a world of crowns and crusades, ordinary hearts could shift history's course. As you stand in their shadowed halls, consider, what does it take to protect a secret when a kingdom's watching? Their story lingers like a troubadour song, waiting for the next verse.